What's up, guys? Michael here, and today I'm going to channel the spirits of my philosophical forefathers to check out Bo Burnham's new Netflix special, Inside. Now, while most of us have spent the past year or so learning how to make bread or developing adult onset agoraphobia, Bo Burnham was writing, filming, editing, and performing in a comedy special that mixes stand-up, sketches, and songs. Show off. And while we found plenty to overanalyze in Burnham's past work, we were surprised by how explicitly philosophical he gets in this special.
There are so many songs in the past about working class jobs, but not a lot about the labor exploitation of the modern world. So that was the idea here.
So we figured it warranted another edition of A Philosopher Reacts. Now, Bo covers a lot of ground in the special, but I want to focus on two interrelated themes: self-examination and a little thing called capitalism. Oh, and also, Jeffrey, you did it. So let's check it out in this episode of A Philosopher Reacts to Inside. Let's start with his educational children's song. After Bo sings about how the world is a magical place where all of nature works together in perfect harmony, his friend / prisoner Socko chimes in with a different perspective.
The simple narrative taught in every history class is demonstrably false and pedagogically classist.
Okay, so Socko might be a Marxist. He's calling history curriculums pedagogically classist, with pedagogy being the theory and practice of teaching. In doing so, he's pointing out the influence that class has on the way we produce and reproduce knowledge. Now, we've all heard the misattributed Churchill line, "History is written by the victors." But philosopher Walter Benjamin has a more insightful version, which translates to empathy with the victors thus comes to benefit the current rulers every time. So history is both written and taught by the class with the most wealth, power, and textbook factories. This is what Paulo Freire describes in Pedagogy of the Oppressed, in which he argues that education is never neutral. It either perpetuates oppressive systems or, probably less often, leads to radical change through a practice of freedom. So let's see where Socko, the maybe Marxist, goes next.
The global network of capital essentially functions to separate the worker from the means of production.
So I know this stuff. That's some good old-fashioned Karl Marx for you. Now here, our commie hand puppet is referencing Marx's argument that industrial capitalism separates the worker from the tools and methods, i.e. the means, to actually make a product. For example, in the pre-industrial era, actually, give me your shoe. Thanks. In the pre-industrial era, a cobbler would make shoes, sell the shoes, receive the money for them, and presumably hit the pub afterwards. Here, the cobbler has access to the labor of making the shoes, the customers, and most importantly, the profits. But as we shift into the era of factory-produced goods, and especially assembly lines, all of this changes. Instead of using craftsmanship to build shoes from scratch, you're, say, poking lace holes in the shoes, one after another, all day long. And once the shoes leave your spot on the line, you're never seeing them again. Most importantly, the shoes you help make are the property of the factory owner, and they're the ones profiting from their sale. You are completely separated and alienated from the process of making and selling the shoes. Not to mention, the whole system puts you at odds with your fellow workers in a dog-eat-dog culture of survival. While most of us don't work in factories, we're all still separated from our respective means of production. So like, if you performed beautiful, emotive content on YouTube, but your boss owned the cameras and the YouTube channel it was posted on, and then took all the profits and gave only a little bit back to you, oh God. The point is that in Marx's view, all of this is endemic to how capitalism and the world works.
And the FBI killed Martin Luther King.
Okay, this one might be a conspiracy theory, but the FBI absolutely killed Fred Hampton.
Private property's inherently theft, and neoliberal fascists are destroying the left.
Okay, so you might have heard the phrase, property is theft, thrown around before, or seen it spray painted on one of those new, like, ugly condo buildings with a name like New Space. But the roots of this go way back to at least philosopher and political theorist Jean-Jacques Rousseau. In his book, The Social Contract, Rousseau differed from his peers like Thomas Hobbes and John Locke in that he imagined a state of nature that was inherently pretty peaceful. That is, until somebody said that they were the landlord of the earth. Here's what he wrote. The first person who, having enclosed a plot of land, took it into his head to say, "This is mine," and found people simple enough to believe him, was the true founder of civil society. And the effects of this one dude who wanted to own some dirt? Just a whole host of wars, murders, genocides, and other atrocities that have shaped civilization for thousands of years. It's like the worst possible episode of House Hunters. And Rousseau wonders why we've all accepted this as normal when we know that no human has special property rights over the earth, except Dolly Parton and Dollywood. That's all hers. Also, she invented the COVID-19 vaccine, right? A century later, Marx and Engels would pick up this same argument in their edgy zine, The Communist Manifesto. For the Simon and Garfunkel of political philosophy, it's important to remember that private property is already done away with for 9/10 of the population because a few rich dudes own all of it and then they rent it to the rest of us. So it's a system that doesn't even benefit people. Unless your parents bought you a house, in which case, I guess, you did it. And can I stay there for free? Let's get back to the song.
And every politician, every cop on the street protects the interests of the pedophilic corporate elite.
Well, Socko clearly read those Q posts that his Aunt Shelly has been sending him on Facebook. Okay, there's a lot more in the segment, but I want to jump ahead and see what Bo has to say about self-examination and how it can help us, well, shut the up. Let's check it out.
Is it necessary that every single person on this planet expresses every single opinion that they have on every single thing that occurs all at the same time? Is that necessary? Or to ask it a slightly different way, can anyone shut the up?
Okay. Now, this actually makes me think of one of Plato's little stories called Crito. In it, Socrates' friend Crito tries to break Socrates out of prison before he gets executed. Instead of going all Shawshank Redemption, though, Socrates is like, nah, bro, let's talk about the meaning of truth. Crito is worried that if Socrates doesn't bust out, everyone in Athens will think Crito and his buddies are punks for letting Socrates die, and their opinions have him stressed. Socrates' response is basically that if you care about all the opinions everyone is expressing out in the streets, you're going to lose sight of truth and wisdom. Now, jump to 19th century Denmark, and philosophy's favorite sad boy, Soren Kierkegaard, who, now that I think of it, has Major Burnham vibes, used a similar perspective to criticize the media of his day. He thought that the advent of publishing made it possible for people to eat up all the bullshit that angry journalists and slick advertisers published while never having to really think for themselves. Now, while a good Lutheran boy like Soren would never use such crass language, he was also basically begging people to shut the up. And it's telling that Bo says this in one of the few segments of Inside where he seems to be performing stand-up, as it's clear that he is aware of the irony of a stand-up comedian using their ability to express whatever opinions they want, telling others to stop expressing all of their opinions on the internet. It's like he's telling others to shut the up while also telling himself to, well, yeah, also maybe shut the up. But let's jump ahead to another segment where Bo is lying on the floor.
You know, maybe allowing giant digital media corporations to exploit the neurochemical drama of our children for profit. You know, maybe that was a bad call by us.
Okay, so his floor ramblings here bring us back to the theme of alienation under capitalism. Now here he's pushing things past what 19th century thinkers like Marx could have considered, and talking about how media and tech companies have figured out how to use our literal brain chemistry to turn us into a bunch of little addicts who hunch over our devices all day while they use our attention to extract data and profit. And apparently, we're fine with letting children's brains get mined for clicks and content, even if it makes them depressed, anxious, and pretty obnoxious. In other words, less talented Bo Burnhams.
Maybe the flattening of the entire subjective human experience into a lifeless exchange of value that benefits nobody except for, a handful of bug-eyed salamanders in Silicon Valley. Maybe that as a way of life forever. Maybe that's not good.
Okay, well here, Bo is starting to touch on what Marx called commodity fetishism, which is when we treat objects and goods like they have some type of magical value disconnected from the labor that creates them. Now, we begin to see things valued not for their practical use, but for their market value. So a Pokemon card becomes detached from how much joy it can bring or how strategic it is, and instead becomes an investment asset that can be cashed in to pay for college or, like buy one astronomy textbook. But it doesn't just stop at Pokemon cards, because it never just stops at Pokemon cards. Eventually, this shapes our brains so that things like wisdom and self-examination get subsumed by cultural and commercial values sold to us by corporations, many of whom happen to be run by bug-eyed salamanders. What feels like meaningful cultural experience is largely just us playing along with a game that creates value for others. But you're probably thinking, sure, Michael, this all makes sense, but what does it have to do with what really matters to me? Namely, sending and receiving nudes. Well, you're in luck, because Bo has a song about this, and we're gonna talk about it next. It's like actually a good song though. It's like a joke, but it's like a good song. It's kind of confusing. Okay, so in this song, we're seeing how sex and romance get packaged up and become a digital product that's tied into the tangled web of clicks and content. Burnham's already focused on the way in which both content, attention, and even the loss of a loved one become commodities in the age of digital capitalism. Here, by pointing out the way in which sexting is the next best thing to actual physical contact, he's showing how even our sex lives can be used to keep us glued to our devices, creating more data and ad revenue for Jeffrey and the boys. And we all know it's only a matter of time before there is a new cryptocurrency called coin that's mined by having tons of digital sex, which it's like kind of hot, I guess. But this is how French philosopher Alain Badiou describes the digital version of love we get on dating apps like Tinder and Bumble. Now, he calls it love comprehensively insured against all risks. You will have love, but will have assessed the prospective relationship so thoroughly. Will have selected your partner so carefully by searching online, by obtaining, of course, a photo, details of his or her taste, date of birth, horoscope sign, etc., and putting it all in the mix. You can tell yourself, this is a risk-free option. Now, basically, rather than love being a passionate adventure that could end up with my homecoming date Christine ditching me to hang out with older guys, which is a thing that happened, it's just another product being sold to us by the bug-eyed salamanders in Silicon Valley. Okay, let's jump ahead a bit, and we're gonna see what Bo has to say about you becoming one with the internet.
That the outside world, the non-digital world, is merely a theatrical space in which one stages and records content for the much more real, much more vital digital space.
I also just realized he doesn't have his shirt on at that part, but that's cool. Now, this goes with the sexting stuff we just talked about, because when digital space is where data can be mined like a natural resource and attention can create profit, then the digital world becomes the real world, because what's more real than profit? And consequently, non-digital space starts to only exist to serve this digital space. It's like the Museum of Ice Cream. It sounds awesome. I mean, a museum of ice cream. But it ends up just being this massive excuse for Instagram moments. It's not there to celebrate the delicious wonder of frozen milk, eggs, and sugar. It's just another place that facilitates content that will exist in a digital space and ideally create engagement and help sell advertising. I note the irony of this. So let's close with one of the last songs in the special, where Bo does his best Yeezus-era Kanye impression.
You say the ocean is rising like I give a
Whew, okay, so to end on a pretty ominous note, it seems like Burnham is clarifying one of the themes of the show, namely that the world isn't ending. It's already over. He's not looking for signs of hope within the current system, as it's this very system that's created the problems he's been exploring throughout the special. He's basically saying that our best case scenario is moving around the deck chairs on the Titanic before the iceberg finishes us off, which, yeah, it's pretty dark. But because it's better for our advertisers if you walk away feeling happy, I'll give the last word to German philosopher Walter Benjamin, someone whose spirit seems to be haunting Burnham's guest house. He wrote, "It is only for the sake of those without hope that hope is given to us. So who knows? Maybe we're not totally screwed. But what do you guys think? As a year stuck inside added a new layer of philosophical depth to Burnham's comedy? Or am I just too easily swayed by the musings of Marxist sock puppets? Let us know what you think in the comments, and definitely let us know what else you'd like to see me wax philosophical about. Big thanks to our awesome patrons for all your support. Destroy that subscribe button like your Bo Burnham, crushing the hopes of a generation, and don't forget to ring that bell, even though, like, what's the point? And as always, thanks for watching. Later. I'm not gonna look, but I know I smell him. Smells like money. Cool. Ow! Just slowly.